Welcome back, everyone. Today, we're going deep, really deep, into the mind of Carl Jung.
One of the most influential thinkers, wouldn't you say, of the 20th century, for sure.
Absolutely. And we've got this amazing YouTube video that dives into his autobiography, Memories, Dreams, Reflections.
This isn't like your typical, dry academic analysis of Jungian theory.
Right.
This is like Jung, in his own words, reflecting on the experiences that shaped his, groundbreaking work. It's pretty cool, I think.
Yeah, it's like getting a sneak peek behind the curtain, right?
Yeah.
Seeing the man behind all those famous theories. And the thing is, Jung, he wasn't initially a fan of autobiographies. He thought a lot of them were like self-deception,
Yeah, totally.
So why'd he eventually write his own?
Well, he felt like it was a task laid upon him from within, is how we put it. It wasn't about, ego or self-promotion, but something much deeper, almost like a sense of duty to share his experiences and, what he learned from them.
That's a great way to put it. It really sets the stage for this deep dive, doesn't it? Because we're not just getting interesting anecdotes here. We're getting this carefully considered reflection on a life devoted to understanding the human psyche.
Mm.
And he starts right at the beginning with his childhood.
Yeah.
And let me tell you, his childhood was anything but ordinary.
Even his earliest memories are steeped in these themes of death and duality that would later become central to his work. Imagine one of your very first memories being a drowned man pulled from a river.
Oh, wow.
That's what Jung experienced.
Wow, that's a powerful image to carry with you. It makes you wonder, right, if those early confrontations with mortality shaped his whole view of the psyche. This idea that there's this inherent darkness that we all have to grapple with.
Totally. And then, on top of that, there's this feeling of duality, of having two distinct personalities within himself. One was grounded and practical, but the other was connected to this hidden world, almost like a premonition of his later ideas about the ego and the shadow self.
It's like those two sides were battling it out from the very beginning. And it wasn't just an inner struggle. His childhood was full of these unexplained events. Near-drowning experiences, sleepwalking, premonitions.
It's kind of spooky when you think about it.
Yeah, it's almost like he was constantly brushing up against the mysteries of the unconscious, even as a child.
It's fascinating to think about how those experiences shaped his worldview, would we be exploring these same territories if we had similar encounters?
Right. It makes you wonder, how much our childhood experiences lay the groundwork for our later interests and obsessions. And then there are the dreams. He describes one from his childhood that's just so vivid, a giant, disembodied phallus falling from heaven.
Okay, that's quite an image.
Yeah, yeah.
And alongside this dream, he's also wrestling with this intense fear of committing the unforgivable sin. That's a lot for a young mind to process.
It is, but it also shows he was already grappling with these huge existential questions, good versus evil, the power of symbols, and this is all before he even hits puberty.
I know, right?
It's amazing.
It seems like Jung was always searching for deeper meaning. He felt really alienated from traditional religion. It wasn't providing the answers he was craving.
So he starts to look elsewhere, right? What was that ritual he created with the stone and the wooden mannequin all about?
That's such a powerful image, like this young boy trying to give form to something he felt inside but couldn't quite grasp, almost like an early attempt to externalize his inner world, foreshadowing his later work with archetypes and the way we project our unconscious onto external symbols.
That makes me think about how we all try to make sense of the invisible through art or music, rituals even. Maybe we're all engaging with these archetypes without even realizing it.
That's a fascinating thought. And as Jung moves through school, we see this recurring theme of him not quite fitting in. He excelled in some subjects but struggled in others, like drawing.
It's like he didn't fit neatly into those academic boxes. And despite his brilliance, he felt increasingly alienated from the urban world, finding more solace in nature in his father's library.
Yeah, it almost seems like he was sensing that disconnect, between the modern world and our deeper, more instinctual selves, a theme that runs through so much of his work.
And the irony of ironies, his classmates nicknamed him Father Abraham. It's like his destiny was calling, even if he couldn't see it yet.
It does make you wonder about that interplay of destiny and choice, doesn't it? But eventually, those threads lead him to university where he's, get this, drawn to both science and the humanities.
That duality again, always trying to bridge that gap between the rational and the irrational.
Exactly. And it wasn't just theoretical for him. He even explored spiritualism. Like he attended seances, investigated psychic phenomena. But even then, his critical thinking never wavered.
He was searching for a way to understand the human mind that was both grounded in evidence and open to the mysteries of the unseen.
And that search ultimately led him to his calling, psychiatry. It was like a flash of illumination while reading a textbook by Croft Ebing. Psychiatry became the path to unite all his diverse interests and his lifelong fascination with the psyche.
That's a pivotal moment, right? The beginning of his journey to reshape the field of psychology as we know it. But this is just the first chapter.
What's fascinating is how, as Jung dives deeper into his career, his personal life starts to mirror his professional pursuits.
It's like he was living out the very concepts he was exploring. He's working with patients, experimenting with hypnosis, and at the same time, all these bizarre, unexplained events are happening at home. Remember the exploding table incident?
Spooky stuff. It makes you wonder if those external events were somehow triggered by his internal explorations, like a manifestation of the unconscious forces he was grappling with.
Ooh, that's a good one. And then there's the case of the woman he seemingly cured with hypnosis who returns later, but with a completely different ailment.
It highlights the complexity of psychosomatic illness, doesn't it? Like, treating the symptom might not address the root cause.
It's a lesson in the limitations of those early psychoanalytic techniques.
Mm.
And then enter Freud.
Ah, yes, Freud.
Jung discovers the interpretation of dreams, and it's like this whole new world opens up for him.
Right.
He must have seen all these connections between Freud's ideas and his own observations, particularly this concept of repression.
But, and this is classic Jung, he wasn't content with simply becoming a Freud disciple. He questioned whether all neuroses could be traced back to sexual repression or, trauma.
That independent streak is so crucial to understanding Jung. He was always pushing back, always searching for a deeper understanding.
Which ultimately led to their dramatic break, didn't it? Two brilliant minds, but fundamentally different approaches to the unconscious.
It's like those two personalities from his childhood were at play again. His scientific side drawn to Freud's rigor, but his intuitive side pushing back, sensing there's more to the story.
And that tension, that conflict, ultimately leads him to develop his own school of thought, analytical psychology. But before that, there's this telling incident. Jung shares a dream with Freud, and Freud, get this, refuses to offer his personal interpretation. Wouldn't touch the subjective, emotional aspects, just stuck to pure science,
Interesting.
And this really bothered Jung, who believed personal context was essential to understanding the unconscious. For Freud, it was all about the objective, the data. But for Jung, the personal stuff held the key.
And this is where Jung's own dream imagery starts to get even richer, even more symbolic.
Right, like that dream about the three-story house. What do you make of that one?
Well, it's like a map of the psyche, isn't it? The different levels of the house, the descent into the basement. It points towards this idea that consciousness is layered, from our everyday awareness down to the darkest, most hidden parts of ourselves.
What's fascinating is that he's not just describing the imagery, but the feeling, of exploring something uncharted, something vast and unknown within himself.
Exactly. And then there's that even weirder dream, the one about the prehistoric landscape with those primordial figures.
Oh, yeah?
It's as if he's tapping into something ancient, beyond personal experience.
That dream was huge for Jung. It pointed toward this concept of a collective unconscious.
A reservoir of universal archetypes and symbols that we all share as humans. Not just our personal memories, but like echoes of human experience itself woven into the fabric of our minds.
Mind-blowing, right. And this is where those recurring figures of the wise old man and the young girl come in. Elijah and Salome.
Right.
Jung saw them as, personifications of these opposing forces within us. Wisdom versus desire, reason versus instinct. It's fascinating how these archetypal energies play out, not just in our dreams, but in our waking lives as well.
That's true.
Think about it. The people you're drawn to, the conflicts you face, are those just personal quirks? Or are they echoes of these deeper patterns? It's like Jung is giving us this whole new way to understand the forces at play within ourselves and in the world around us.
And things take an even stranger turn when Jung starts encountering these figures in his waking life.
Seriously. Like Philemon, the wise old man with bullhorns, who became sort of a spiritual guide for Jung.
That's wild. And then there's that incredible synchronicity with the kingfisher. He dreams of a kingfisher and then finds one dead in his garden.
That gives me chills. It's like the lines between the inner and outer worlds are blurring. What do you make of those kinds of synchronicities? Pure chance or something more?
I honestly don't know. But They definitely make you question our whole understanding of reality.
For Jung, those experiences were proof that the unconscious wasn't just personal, but something that connected us to a larger web, a web that extends beyond our individual minds.
But as he delves deeper into this web, things get, well, a little darker, don't they?
They do. Right before World War I, he starts having these intense visions, oceans of blood, flooded cities, an overwhelming sense of doom.
Well, he was tapping into the collective anxieties of humanity, a premonition of the horrors to come. Must have been a heavy burden to carry.
And it really pushed him to explore the shadow side, the darker, more destructive aspects of the unconscious. He even has a vision of descending into this cosmic abyss. And who does he encounter there? The wise old man and the young girl, representing those primal opposing forces.
It seems like he was constantly wrestling with those opposing forces within himself, always trying to find that balance.
Exactly. And through that process, he realizes he can't go back to the way things were. He has to find a way to integrate these powerful unconscious experiences into his life and his work.
And that need for integration, for wholeness, becomes central to his entire approach to psychology, doesn't it? It's like he's saying we can't just repress or ignore the unconscious. We have to find a way to make peace with it, to make it part of who we are.
Absolutely. And it's a message that resonates even more strongly today, I think. We're constantly bombarded with information, trying to project this perfect image of ourselves. But what about those deeper parts, the dreams, the fears, the desires that we try so hard to hide?
Jung was saying, bring that stuff into the light. Don't be afraid of it. He saw the unconscious not as something to fear, but as a source of wisdom and creative potential.
But that integration, it's not always easy, is it?
Definitely not. He needed a new framework, a new language to understand this process. And that's where alchemy comes in, right?
Right. He saw all these parallels between the alchemist's quest for transformation and his own explorations of the unconscious.
It's like they were both searching for that magic formula to turn base metal into gold. But not in a literal sense, of course.
Exactly. They were both trying to transform the raw material of the unconscious into something more refined, more whole.
It's like he found this ancient blueprint for the process of individuation. And just to be clear for our listeners, by individuation, Jung means.
It's about becoming the most authentic, whole version of yourself. It's a lifelong process of integrating all those different parts of yourself, the light and the shadow, the conscious and the unconscious.
That's such a helpful way to put it. And this connection to alchemy really influenced his later work. But it wasn't just theoretical for him, right? He needed a space to actually embody this process of transformation.
Yeah.
And that's where his famous tower at Bollingen comes in.
It wasn't just a retreat. It was like a physical manifestation of his inner world. And get this, he built it himself.
Wow, I didn't know that. That's amazing.
It was really important for him to create this space with his own hands, and he chose to build it near water, which seems significant given how prominent water was in his early memories.
It's like he was intentionally weaving together his past and his present, his inner and outer worlds in this one structure.
Exactly, and he lived there simply, without modern conveniences. Chopping wood, pumping water, it was almost like a ritual, a way to connect with a more primal way of being, to ground himself in the physical world while exploring the depths of his psyche.
It's like he understood that the journey inward also requires a connection to the outer world, to nature, to the simple things.
And in that solitude, he kept wrestling with those big questions. The nature of the soul, the meaning of death, our place in the universe. It's like he was building a bridge between the ancient and the modern, the personal and the universal.
And his insights on those big questions, well, I think we'll have to save those for the next part of our deep dive. Stay tuned, because things are about to get even more mind-blowing. So we left off with Jung in his self-built tower, embracing this simpler life while grappling with some of life's biggest mysteries. And it's during this period that he really digs into questions about, well, the soul, death, and what might lie beyond this earthly existence.
And it wasn't just like armchair philosophizing. He had some pretty intense personal experiences, near-death experiences, visions that really informed his understanding of these concepts. What's so fascinating is that he started interpreting these experiences through the lens of, Eastern philosophies like Hinduism and Buddhism.
That's right. Here we have one of the most influential Western psychologists embracing concepts like reincarnation. It really shows his willingness to challenge conventional thinking and explore different perspectives, doesn't it?
Totally. And that open-minded approach is really what allowed him to see connections between these seemingly disparate ideas, to weave together insights from both the East and the West. But he also found evidence for the soul's journey much closer to home in those precognitive dreams he describes.
You're talking about the dreams where he literally foresaw people's deaths before they happened.
Exactly. Those accounts are uh, pretty chilling. It's like he was tapping into a realm beyond our normal understanding of time, like catching glimpses of the future.
It definitely makes you wonder about the nature of reality, doesn't it? Could our minds be capable of perceiving things that our linear, everyday understanding of time can't grasp?
It's a question that really haunted Jung, and those precognitive dreams weren't the only thing challenging his and our ideas about consciousness. He also wrote about people's unconscious experiences during comas, suggesting that consciousness could continue even when the body seems completely unresponsive.
So is he suggesting we might need to redefine what it means to be alive?
It's a really profound question. Jung believed that the psyche wasn't limited the way our physical bodies are. It's like it can operate outside our typical perceptions of space and time, tapping into these realms we can barely comprehend with our everyday minds. Remember that dream he had about those metallic discs coming down from the sky?
Oh, yeah. That one's wild. What was your take on that one?
Well, it's like he was envisioning a connection between the individual psyche and some larger cosmic order, as if we're all plugged into this vast network of consciousness that extends far beyond
That's
ourselves.
like we're all these individual drops in this vast interconnected ocean of consciousness. And that image really speaks to his idea of the self, right?
Exactly. The self, in Jungian terms, is that archetype of wholeness that encompasses both our conscious and unconscious aspects. It's not just about our ego, our individual identity, but something much larger, something that connects us to the entirety of existence.
So it's not just about personal growth, but about recognizing our place within a much larger cosmic order.
Exactly. Jung believed that our striving for wholeness, that process of individuation, was not only essential for our individual well-being, but also a reflection of humanity's evolution as a whole.
But he also saw the dangers of neglecting our shadow side, both individually and, well, collectively, especially after living through the horrors of two world wars and the rise of totalitarian regimes.
Right. He saw these events as evidence of the shadow running wild. Like, what happens when we repress or deny those darker aspects of ourselves? And when those repressed energies erupt, well, they can manifest in some pretty terrifying ways, not just in individuals, but on a global scale.
So how do we integrate those shadow elements in a healthy way?
Well, for Jung, it wasn't about conquering or eliminating the shadow, but about bringing it into the light of consciousness, where it could be understood and transformed. He believed the shadow holds this valuable energy and potential, but if we deny it, it'll just find other ways to express itself, often in destructive ways.
And this is where his critique of modern society comes in, right? He felt like we had become too focused on the rational, the material, at the expense of the spiritual, the symbolic.
That's right. And he saw this imbalance as leading to a sense of meaninglessness and despair. It's like we've lost touch with those deeper sources of meaning that nourish our souls. Think about how many people today feel lost and disconnected despite having material abundance.
It's like we've achieved all this outward success, but at the expense of our inner lives.
Jung's message was to go back to that ancient wisdom, to rediscover those myths and symbols that connect us to something larger than ourselves. He wasn't advocating for a return to blind faith or dogma, but for a new kind of spirituality, one grounded in a deep understanding of the human psyche and our place in the cosmos.
His work feels so incredibly relevant today, in a world grappling with climate change, political division, and this widespread anxiety. It's like he offers us this map for navigating these turbulent times, a map of the inner world, reminding us that the journey toward wholeness is ongoing, and it requires courage, honesty, and a willingness to face our shadows.
And it's not about achieving some perfect state of enlightenment. It's about embracing the complexities of who we are, the light and the dark, and using that awareness to create a more just and compassionate world.
It's about recognizing that we're all connected, not just to each other, but to something much larger than ourselves.
Exactly. And that realization can be both humbling and empowering. It reminds us that our individual choices and actions have ripple effects, impacting not just our own lives, but the well-being of the entire planet.
So what does all this mean for you, dear listener? What resonates with you from Jung's life and his ideas? What shadows might you be neglecting in your own life?
Take a moment to reflect on these questions.
This deep dive has really just scratched the surface of Jung's incredible journey and the profound depths of his work. But hopefully it sparked your curiosity and inspired you to explore further.
We'll be back soon for the final part of this deep dive. where we'll explore some of the lasting impacts of Jung's ideas on the world today. Until then, keep exploring, keep questioning, and keep diving deep.
Okay, so we've been on quite a journey with Carl Jung, from his, mystical childhood to his intense dreams to his exploration of the soul and death and the collective unconscious.
It's amazing how ahead of his time he was. Like, so many of the themes he grappled with feel even more relevant now, you
Yeah,
know?
absolutely. And it's not just in psychology where his impact is felt. Jung's ideas have kind of seeped into art and literature, spirituality, even pop culture. Think about the terms like archetypes, the collective unconscious, the shadow self. I mean, they've become part of our everyday language.
He really gave us a new way of looking at the human experience. And those insights, well, they continue to resonate, especially in a world that often feels, I don't know, fragmented and uncertain.
Yeah. One of the things that struck me is how his emphasis on symbolism and myth feels particularly timely. Like in a world where so many people are, questioning traditional religions or seeking deeper meaning, Jung reminds us of the power of those ancient stories, those universal themes that speak to well, the human condition.
He believed those myths weren't just fairy tales, but like a kind of psychological blueprint, a way of understanding the deeper patterns and motivations that drive us. They provide a framework for navigating, well, life's complexities, for facing our fears and embracing our potential.
And let's not forget his work with the shadow.
Yeah.
In a culture that's so obsessed with presenting a perfect, polished image, Jung's reminder that wholeness requires acknowledging our darker side feels more crucial than ever.
Right. He wasn't saying we should, celebrate our negative tendencies, but that we can't simply ignore or repress them. Those shadow elements hold a kind of raw energy that, well, if understood and integrated, can actually fuel our growth and creativity.
It's like he's saying, hey, everyone's got a shadow side. Let's stop pretending it doesn't exist and start working with it.
Exactly. It's about bringing those hidden parts of ourselves into the light of consciousness, where they can be transformed. And that process of integration, well, that's where real psychological growth happens.
Jung also challenged the purely rational, materialistic worldview that dominates so much of, modern society. He believed we're inherently meaning-seeking creatures, that we need to connect with something larger than ourselves, something transcendent.
Yeah. His call for a new kind of spirituality, one that embraces both science and the soul, is something so many people are grappling with today. We see this in the rising interest in mindfulness, meditation, practices that connect us to, I don't know, something beyond the material world.
It's like we're recognizing the limitations of a purely rational approach to life. We're hungry for something more, something that nourishes our souls and connects us to a sense of purpose.
Of course, Jung's work wasn't without its critics. Some find his ideas, I don't know, too mystical, too focused on the unconscious, not scientific enough. Others worry that his emphasis on archetypes and the collective unconscious kind of minimizes individual agency and responsibility.
And there's the argument that some self-help movements have oversimplified or distorted his ideas, stripping them of their complexity and nuance.
It's always important to approach any thinker with a critical eye, to engage with their ideas thoughtfully, to see what resonates and what doesn't. But even with those critiques, there's no denying the enduring power and influence of Jung's work.
He dared to explore the uncharted territories of the human psyche, bringing back insights that continue to challenge and inspire us.
He reminds us that becoming who we truly are, that process of individuation, it's a lifelong journey. It's not a linear path, but a spiral, with moments of darkness and light, expansion and contraction.
And he ultimately invites us to embrace this journey with courage, with honesty, with a willingness to confront our own depths.
Because it's in those depths, Jung believed, that we discover our true purpose and our unique contribution to the world.
So as we wrap up this deep dive into the world of Carl Jung, we leave you with this question. What will you take from his journey and apply to your own? How will you embrace the fullness of your being and contribute to a more whole and compassionate world?
Keep exploring, keep questioning, and keep diving deep.
Until next time, fellow adventurers.